Sit. Good boy. Hi, Trenton from Classic Rides Arizona. We are working on our 1979 Chevy K10 pickup, and we're doing a complete fuel system upgrade on this truck. We've been plagued by some drivability issues on it, so we've put a Holley Sniper EFI unit on it, and now we are upgrading our fuel line and tank with this kit from Tanks Inc. It's the LS swap kit from them, and we're going to walk you through how we set up our tank before we install it in the truck. To complete this job, you're going to need a tape measure, both a Phillips and a flat blade screwdriver, a 9mm wrench, and a 9/32 and a 8mm socket. You're going to need some snips. This is Loctite thread sealant and Permatex aviation gasket maker. And they're both fuel resistant. And then a marker and a heat gun. Our new tank came with 3 holes in it. There's one at the back here for the filler neck. There's a small hole here that's 1 5/8 for the sending unit. And then there's a bigger hole here that's 2 1/8 inches, and that's where the pump is going to be installed. The first thing that you need to do is to measure the depth of the tank at the sending unit. And the instructions tell us that if it's between 6 inches and 15.5 inches deep, you're going to need to take the sending unit apart and shorten it. And so we'll take our measurement here straight up, and it looks like we are right at 10 inches deep. So it looks like we're going to need to shorten our sending unit. So what we're going to need to do with our tank depth is get rid of this lower mounting bracket. So what I've done is I've loosened the hardware already, and these 2 screws here are going to come completely off, and they're going to be thrown away. And then these 2 here, we'll take these screws off and keep them, and then we'll dispose of this whole metal bracket, and we'll screw the rheostat directly back into the upper bracket up here. Now we need to set the depth of our float for our sending unit. So what you need to do is measure your tank, which ours is 10 inches, divide that by 2, so 5 inches, and then you need to add 1/8 of an inch for this gasket here. And so what we need to do for ours is slide this so that we have exactly 5 1/8 inches from the mounting surface to the center of the float right here. The other thing that we need to measure once we have the depth of the sending unit set is the float length. And so what we're going to need to do is we take a straight edge out. What we want is for the float to be right inside the top of the tank when it's all the way up. And so I took a ruler, which is the same thickness as our gasket. It's 1/8 of an inch. I also measured the thickness of the tank, and at the top it's about 3/16 of an inch. So what I'm going to do is with my ruler here, I'm going to measure that I have about 3/16 of an inch gap from the top of the float, and then I should have the float right inside the top of the tank. Then what I'm going to do is come back and cut off any excess on the bar here, and also cut off any excess mounting bracket there so that the rheostat is the lowest thing in the tank. We've got everything on the sending unit trimmed to size, so we cut off the excess on the float bar and the excess on the mounting bracket, and now it's time to install it. And it's pretty straightforward. You just need to be mindful because you're limited by where the holes are for the mounting screws. So you'll just need to make sure whichever direction that you mount it, the float will be able to fully articulate without hitting any obstructions on the side of the tank or any of the baffles within the tank. And then we're going to use our gasket sealer and thread sealer when we install it, just to limit the chances of having any gas leaks back here. We have our sending unit final installed, so now it's time to move on to the pump assembly. And this is going to be another measure twice, cut once job, and you're going to get to do math. Tanks Inc. provides a diagram and some formulas that you'll need to follow. So first, again, you take the depth of the tank. Ours is 10.5 inches. And then you also need to know which pump you have. Ours is the GPA4. That will determine the measurements that you need to take for cutting the supply line and the return line on the pump housing. The other measurement you will need to know is the height of the pump and filter sock. So this sock, it just presses on there, and then you need to measure from the bottom of the sock here to the top of this black housing here. And then once you have the depth of the tank and that number, you can start cutting your supply and return lines, and some snips like these just cut right through them. And then once you have them all cut to length, we'll show you how to install the housing to the pump. Now that we have everything cut to the proper length, it's time to start putting the whole pump assembly together. And so what we need to do is we need to attach the black supply line to the output on the pump. And we're going to leave this white sleeve on here, but it's a very tight fit. So what we need to do is take a heat gun and we'll turn it on low and just very slowly, because we don't want to melt the plastic and overdo it. We'll just heat it a little bit at a time. And then we'll just press it straight on to the pump. And you need to press it straight, you don't want to break anything. And you can go back and add a little heat as you go, versus putting too much heat on it up front and damaging anything. Well, that went together surprisingly easily, actually. So you just need to tighten a hose clamp at the bottom of this line here, and then you'll rotate the pump in so it sits in between the supply line and the return line. Tanks Inc. provides a couple zip ties to tie it all together nice and neat. Then you attach the electrical connector here. You're going to feed the wires up through these nuts up on top, and then you simply tighten these with a 9mm wrench, and they're not going to go anywhere. And then the last thing to keep in mind is the orientation of the filter sock. So when you look inside, you'll see there's a rectangular tray inside there, and you just need to make sure that the rectangular filter is oriented with the tray. And then you're also going to want to keep in mind where your fittings are going, what direction they're going, to make sure you're not going to be hitting a frame or anything once you install it back in the vehicle. So we're just going to install the pump in the tank, and then we should be ready to install the tank in the vehicle. And then we just have about a million other things to do for wiring and plumbing before we're ready to fire it up with the new fuel injection system. And we will get you an update on the other end of this project. And thank you for watching.